Welcome to the Joyful Frugalista, the podcast that's all about living a richer life with less. I'm your host, Serina Bird, author and passionate frugalista. Each episode, we dive into inspiring stories, practical tips and joyful conversations that help you create abundance, embrace mindful spending, and live your best life, all without breaking the bank. So grab a cuppa, get comfy, and let's explore how being a frugalista can lead to freedom, happiness, and a whole lot of joy. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult a qualified professional before making financial decisions. Hello, Frugalistas, and welcome to today's podcast. Today I have a special guest, and of course, all of my guests are special. Today we are going to talk about cultivating wealth and how to get our finances growing. And you may have guessed there's a bit of a gardening theme to this as well. But first, if you love this podcast and find it useful, please pay it forward by liking or commenting. And also join the Joyful Frugalista Facebook group to join in on discussions with like-minded frugalistas. Today we're joined by Jessica Brady, financial advisor, educator, founder, and now author of this fabulous book and pick, which I love the colour, Get Growing, a no-nonsense guide to cultivating wealth and financial freedom. Jessica is host of the Financially Fierce podcast and creator of the Greenhouse Money Growing Program and Evergreen Money Club. She has spent more than 2 decades in financial services, helping thousands of Australians transform their relationship with money through deeply human, neuroscience-informed coaching. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, look, it's great. And so your book has this kind of plant theme running through this. So are you a gardener or are you just like this theme?
I love the theme. So, I used to give financial advice. I'm now a former financial advisor. But when I was starting, my online education business, I named the first program that we do, like our flagship program, the greenhouse, because I wanted it to be an intentional space for growth. And, gardening and green and growing, your wealth is very similar to how, some of the best ecosystems in the world grow. And it kind of just stuck. And then I thought, goodness, this is a really great analogy, an easy, simple way for us to think about how we grow our wealth. And so you'll see an inordinate amount of references to gardening and nature and, wonderful metaphors that I've used throughout the book.
Yeah, look, I do love it. I bought a new house a year ago where I do have a garden. I currently have 21 pumpkins I'm waiting to harvest. So I know. And that's amazing too. Like from little seeds, you can suddenly have this huge harvest. And that really does resonate with me in terms of how compound interest is working in my garden, in a sense.
I mean, I have a concrete courtyard, so I am a aspirational gardener. I wouldn't say that I am a real life gardener, but it's on the list. Hopefully one day I can have a lovely flourishing little garden.
Well, sometimes I refer to them as my $1,000,000 tomatoes because, it is a privileged position and it's lovely to have this fresh produce, but it costs a lot of money to be able to be in that situation,
It really does, especially at the moment.
especially at the moment. So let's go back to your roots, back to the gardening analogy. So you open your book by sharing a little bit about your own money story, and there's a lot of vulnerability in there. So why was this important for you to share, and how important is it for people to understand their early experiences in life and how it shapes their lifelong money beliefs?
Yeah, look, I'm an avid reader and I have been incredibly lucky to read so many money books. And I guess, earlier on in my journey when I was reading some of these money books, I kind of came from a place of, well, it's easy for you to say because, I made all of these assumptions. You're probably from a family of wealth. You've probably had it really easy or had it really good. And that's not necessarily everyone's stories, but I just felt really strongly that if I was going to ask people, as I do inside the book, to go back and to understand where their beliefs come from and to ask really vulnerable, challenging questions as to who I am and what I've been through and how is that impacting my belief systems, I wanted to be really raw and vulnerable myself and say, listen, if I'm going to share with the world some really dark and windy, parts of my journey, I want to do it because I want you to know that I haven't been perfect with money. I don't come from a lot of money, and I'm not someone from an ivory tower who's never made a mistake. I have been, right in the scrap there with you. I have made more money mistakes than I care to count. And I just wanted people to feel solidarity. I wanted to break that stigma of shame. And I thought the only way to do that is to share some of my stories and to make people feel less alone. And hopefully, I mean, there are some dark moments in there, but hopefully kind of giggle and find some lighthearted human moments, because I think we love to pretend that money is really clinical and logical, but money is messy and complex and emotional and deeply human. And I wanted to kind of bring that to the foray as well.
Yeah, well said. And I think too, particularly for women, if we had this story about someone's perfect life, their luxury car, their perfect family, their perfect home, I don't think it resonates as much for women, especially women who've got a bit of experience. You sort of go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, totally. And it's also like, there's one thing to be aspirational, but I think it's completely different to go, okay, I'm not alone. There's so much solitude, there's so much silence with money, and to feel slightly less alone on that journey, I think is hugely powerful.
Yeah, most definitely. So you also talk in your book about dirt. So we talk about roots, but we talk about dirt. So I was really intrigued to see this as well. It's all about the systematic inequalities that make money harder for certain cohorts, especially women, First Nations people, migrants, and others. And, once again, I guess going back 20, 30 years, a lot of finance books would have been written by people who had not experienced any kind of inequality. So you have quite a long list of equity measures or wins, particularly when it comes to women, and they're not all that long ago, some of them.
Yeah, I'm feeling particularly dirty at the moment, given the state of the world and what's going on, from a macroeconomic perspective globally and onshore. Look, I could have written a whole book based on that one chapter. So the idea for me was, let me expose the dirty truth around the systems and structures that exist or existed to make wealth unequal. And it was actually, as someone who I guess naively like prided myself on having awareness that, as a white, straight, middle class woman, I was inherently privileged. And yet, when I was reading and discovering, I went into the National Archives, I went down some strange rabbit holes. The more I learned, the more horrified I was. And I thought it is so deeply unfair to say to people, if you just do these things, you can be wealthy. If you want it enough, you can have it. And if you haven't got yourself to where you want to be from a wealth perspective, then that is a you problem. And it was about saying, absolutely, it is not. And here is all the ways that the systems and the laws and the people in charge have actually intentionally created boundaries and othered people in a way that has caused huge wealth inequality, which, look, as you say, some of them existed until very recently, but they also then fed into this cultural narrative that has become really hard to shake. And we see that a lot through the lens of gender. And that's why I do call out a lot around, wealth inequality for women and just, how pervasive and insidious that has been for way too long and how hard it is to shake. We're on record for still, taking hundreds of years to get to parity from a wage gap perspective. And so I just wanted people to understand that you can control elements of your garden, but there is a whole weather piece that's going on here that no one appears to be talking about, unlike real weather, which we talk about ad nauseum every day. And I didn't want to pretend that it wasn't, because I think it is way too important. And again, having read lots of money books, I just felt like it was glaringly obviously missing in many of them, that well, in all of them actually. I don't think I've read any that really tackled it. And as I said, heartbreakingly, so much of what I wrote and so many pieces to that puzzle didn't actually make the book, because alas, it would have turned into some sort of, trilogy series, which I didn't have the appetite, nor I'm sure the readers wouldn't either, to write nor read.
Do you think that sort of more modern day digital tools are helping to democratize finance, or is it making it more confusing, particularly from those sectors that are vulnerable?
I think it's making it more accessible for sure. it is more accessible now to round up your coffee and be able to invest and to go onto the likes of AI and ask it a very simple financial literacy question. But there are some complexities that exist there as well. I'm very worried by the rise of AI being used for financial advice. And I just think, who owns those tools? How are they being coded? And what intentions do the people behind those codings have? And I put my very skeptical hat on. And I think, are these being written in ways that can be used quite nefariously? And I see some research that is quite alarming to show that they might be. And I think the other piece is around the sheer amount of information that is out there then becomes incredibly overwhelming. So people go, cool, I'm going to get brave, I'm going to give it a go. Then they get conflicting information that they put in how to invest, and there's 4 million hits on Google. And they think, I actually don't even know where to begin here. This feels way too burdensome. I'll come back to this later. And we know that for very many people, later is never. And so I think that, there's choice fatigue, there's analysis paralysis, and there's also a confidence and trust element as well. So I think it definitely has some benefits. And I think that there are some things to be cautious or wary of as well.
Yeah, well said. You're right. It is more accessible, but the AI revolution is tricky when it comes to finance. I did a podcast with Donna McGeorge, who's author of the book, The ChatGPT Revolution, I think, which is still tracking really well. It was in the top 10 bestsellers at Canberra Airport last time I was traveling. And she wrote it a couple of years ago. And when I spoke to her, she was like surprised. She thought like people would get sick of the topic within like 6 months. But yeah, it is a very real issue, isn't it? Like, your AI tool, ChatGPT or whatever you're using, is not a financial advisor.
No, it's not. And look, I wonder if I've entered an age in my life where I'm just becoming, so old that I'm like, oh no, what are these robots doing coming to like ruin the day? I wonder if that's sort of an age thing. But I also, I think if you look at the world at large at the moment, when I grew up, probably definitely naively, I just thought everyone's out to do good and make the world a better place, and rainbows and unicorns and, fountains full of chocolate everywhere. And of course, if you've got any level of critical thinking and you've been watching the world of late, it's very obvious to see that actually many of the people who are the wealthiest, who are the people who are making some of the biggest, or pretty much all of the biggest decisions in the world, are scary and in lots of instances dangerous. And I think it does help us recognize that actually we do need to, have some filters here about understanding like, where does this come from? Who owns this? What are their intentions, and how is this helping me? But is it also harming me? And understanding that the system is fractured and very much designed to support the people at the top. And I know that sometimes people accuse me of being a communist or a socialist or a Marxist. I've been called them all. And I'm like, is it, or is it just about having a healthy level of skepticism and trying to understand who benefits here and in what way, and in what, how are they harming and who are they harming? I think these are questions that we need to sit with, and they're awful and uncomfortable in many instances. But I think for so long, like we saw the rise of technology and we all just were like, oh my gosh, this is great. I can show my friends what I had for lunch yesterday. What a brilliant piece of innovation this is, this thing called social media. And we have seen the fallout of the wild west of technology and the lack of regulation and the lack of leadership in terms of governments being able to understand the benefits that it could have had and has had, but also the deeply worrying repercussions. And they just didn't manage that well. And so, yeah, skeptical me over here is like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes, lots of issues to discuss with that. And it's also a lot of those themes are things I'm deeply passionate about as well. But back to your wonderful book. So throughout your book, you have a lot of case studies, but you don't call them case studies. You've got a really cool name for them. You call them Money in the Wild. And they're so authentic. I really love how authentic and real they are.
I was blown away. So I put the call out to my community, and I didn't even tell them what it was for, because I hadn't told anyone that I was writing a book, because I don't even think I'd really like wrapped my head around the fact that I had signed on and told myself that I was going to write this book. So I just, went out to this community and went, "Hello, beautiful people. I'm working on this top secret project that I can't tell you anything about yet, but I would love to have a whole bunch of you contribute. You will be anonymous. Who's in?" And what I was not prepared for was the amount of responses, the quality and the depth of honesty and vulnerability. The hardest thing was actually trying, took I have a gorgeous friend of mine. We sat for 2 days because we'd read them all, but we sat for 2 days trying to figure out which ones are going to make the final cut and which parts of the story are going to make the final cut. And I probably could have done a whole book on them. And I really am glad to hear, I had lots of people, even one person this morning, telling me how much they enjoyed those in the book, because again, it makes us feel less alone. And, the world is wild. And to be able to have people say, this is what I went through as a child, and now I've realized how it's hurting me, or this is my biggest regret with money, or this is what I'm really proud of or really embarrassed about, in a way that is not, elitist, or, these are not people going, oh, well, with my third jet, we mucked it up and we put the wrong interiors in, and I deeply regret that as a money, there's nothing like that. Although it would have been really funny if we got any responses like that. I probably would have just chucked it in for some extra lols. It's raw and they're honest, and I feel enormously privileged to be part of a community that is so open to sharing with each other. And I just think it breaks down so many barriers.
Yeah, definitely, because we don't talk about money enough. I mean, we do and we don't, but if we do talk about it, it can be in a braggy sense. Like people will see things, like they'll see the new car. And I'm saying that because we're about to get a new car. It's the first time I've had a brand new car in like about 25 years. But for various reasons, we wanted another car this year because my eldest son's about to drive and we wanted a second vehicle. And we've done all the sums and so forth. But what people won't see behind that is, all the years I was with my old car that I had for, I think, 17 years. And, peanut butter bread crust that were in the back while I was struggling as a single parent, and how we cycle a lot of places to make ends meet. They'll just see the shiny car. They don't see all the other bits. And you don't know when you see that whether someone's paid it outright, whether it's on a lease, whether they got bad finance terms, do you? So people just don't see the reality of what goes behind that, what's under the hood, so to speak.
And similarly, I drive, well, I don't, but I have a 20-something-year-old car that literally you can probably hear from the next suburb as we're ricketing along to the dog park. And I was actually saying to friends last night at dinner, I haven't turned my car on since before the conflict in Iran broke out. So I actually don't even know if it's starting at the moment because I very rarely use a car. But I also look at people looking at me going, oh my goodness, look at this, lady with her car, and she just, needs to go to the dump, which look probably does. But I think, wow, people are so judgy either way. And I think to myself, well, A, I barely drive it. B, it's to go to the dog park and the dog normally comes back covered in mud. So like for me, a new car is going to give me more anxiety than I need right now. And I would much rather my money to go on things that are much more valuable for me. I don't have a garage. I don't want it to sit for me personally, a brand new car in my tiny little suburb in Sydney where, uh, it's beautiful and tree lined, but that means that lots of bats and birds and goodness knows what else, decide to leave little gifts for you all over the car. I'd much rather go on holidays. I'd
That
much rather
happens.
it happens. I'd much rather put the money in my offset account, in my niece's investment accounts, in my own it just comes back to understanding what is a priority for you at different points in your life, as you say, and, at what cost and what does that mean from a values perspective? And so I love being judged from people when I drive around in my, let's call her vintage car without the vintage classique sort of elements. Because I just think you have no idea what's going on in someone's, situation. And ultimately, who cares?
Exactly, exactly. But, back to your money in the wild stories, they tell it as it is, don't they? So, you've got a much clearer perspective. I mean, some people are doing really well, some people are struggling, some people have come out the other end. It's, that's that whole spectrum. And it's just different and individual for everyone.
Yeah. And what I really love is to see that spectrum of people who are like, I don't feel like I've got it yet. People who are sort of halfway on that journey going, oh, I feel like I've figured some of it out, but I still can feel these are big blind spots or things that I need to kind of still sit with and reconcile. And other people who are like, it took lots of hard, deep inner work, but here's where I got to. And to be able to see that kind of transformation journey throughout multiple people's, stories, I think is really empowering because I often feel like we believe sometimes that this element of our life is fixed, that we're either good with money or we're bad with money, and it's very binary. And I want to show people
Yeah,
actually
isn't it?
look,
I'm
it
shocking
is.
with money. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and yet there are aspects where some people might be good, really good with aspects of money and struggle with other aspects of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm shocking at Cantonese. Shocking. I would imagine I've never tried it. I'm shocking at Russian. I'm shocking at Spanish. I have been
I
trying
was I
Spanish.
was about to be impressed because I speak Mandarin. I was like, "Oh my goodness, you speak Cantonese." I was going to try and, throw a couple of yum cha phrases at you.
No, but I
I
can say
didn't.
like hola and como estás. I've been trying to learn Spanish for a little while. No, but the point is like, I've never tried. I've never put any intent behind speaking Mandarin or Cantonese or any of the other languages apart from some small Spanish, which I'm still grappling with. But the point is like, if you've never been taught about money, if you've never invested time and money and resources in learning about money, how would you expect to be good at it? Because if your parents taught you nothing, if your school taught you nothing, it is so deeply unfair to say to yourself that you are quote unquote shocking or bad with money when you haven't been taught anything about it. Now, if I've gone and done, 10 years worth of Cantonese lessons every week and I still said I was shocking, I'd probably have some hard questions to ask myself about, what's going on here? What's happened? What's not worked out? But so many people, for really unfair reasons, have told themselves that this world is too hard, despite the fact that they play in it every single day. And you almost see this quite, it's probably not the right word to use, but like almost defeatist attitude, especially as cost of living pressures have risen. They've taken that as a personal marker of failure. And I'm like, no, not at all. You've never learned anything about it. The world is tough right now, but you can get better. This is a skill to cultivate. And like any skill, like gardening, like growing pumpkins, you're going to learn along the way and you're going to make mistakes along the way. And that is okay.
Yeah. And it's not set or forget either. Like, it's a bit like tending a garden. You can't just put in some seeds and walk away. You've got to water it, you've got to weed it, you've got to monitor it for pests, you've got to harvest it. There's the same with our money. There's a lot of things that you've got to do.
I feel like you've read the book. I feel like you've read the book.
Have you see all my little post-it notes everywhere, which
I
is great.
do. Thank you. It's so nice to see. So nice to see.
So, Money Monster. So, throughout the book, particularly with your Money in the Wild stories, you've asked people to identify a money monster name. So, and you have your own money monster name too.
I do, because I think we all have a money monster. So throughout the book, I try to give different exercises and ideas to make it practical. Like, it's wonderful to talk about these things from a conceptual lens, but mm, when I read books, I'm like, so what? Like, what do I take from this? How do I actually implement things? And I thought, well, how do I make this memorable and easy to understand? And to the point before around, having these belief systems that are often very harmful, was reading a lot of this neuroscience research and therapy-based research around how do we, create different personas for ourselves, or the concepts of parts theory. And I just believe, having helped thousands of people over a long time with money, that every one of us has some sort of money monster lurking within us. And that's that annoying voice that tells us that we're bad with money, or, just spend the money, or, just do the unhinged thing that you probably know you shouldn't be doing but do anyway. And I thought, let's make this a little monster. Let's name it something other than us. Let's give it a job and let's understand, where does it live? Where does it come from? Why is it showing up? How is it hurting me? And what am I going to say to it next time it appears? And so then I think it helps create some distance between us and that kind of compelling voice that tells us to do the thing that we know we shouldn't be doing, and how we are going to retaliate or respond when we hear it again. So for me, my life and money monster is called Stacy the Staller. So when I am having to sit on making a big decision, or if I am worried that I'm going to muck something up, my go-to strategy is just to tell myself, I am not ready, my friend. You are not fully equipped yet. You don't have the skill set. You don't have enough time to read all about it. You might need to sit for weeks and make the perfect decision. I will give myself any good excuse. The moon's not in the right, just ridiculous things to legitimize why making the decision that I know I need to make should not be made right now. And the irony of that is that the swelling impact to my mental load, because I can feel it, it's heavy, it sits there. I know it's still there. I'm just trying to pretend it's not. Then becomes this thing when I finally do the thing, normally because I am forced to, or I decide to rip the Band-Aid off. It's so much easier than I have swelled it to in my brain. And then I think, goodness me, if only I'd just done it in that moment, I would have saved time, effort, resources, and I would have made more money. I've wasted money here as well. And so for me, what I'm trying to live by is this idea that anytime I hear Stacey the staller, who is very successful or has been in the past very successful at stalling on things, I actually have to say, okay, thank you. I actually know why you're here. You're trying to keep me safe. You are trying to stop me from quote unquote failing or making a mistake or not doing it perfectly. And I think that that's a really virtuous, noble act. Wonderful. But I can't listen to you. And so when I have had moments exactly like when the publishers reached out to me and said, yo, do you want to write a book? My brain was like, no, I cannot write a book. And internally I was like, this is something that's scary and I'm terrified and I don't feel like I know how to do this. I got to say yes. And I got to figure it out as I go because I could give myself the reasons to stall forever and they would be good reasons, but at what cost?
Well said. It sounds a little bit like imposter syndrome, but plus some.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to money, it's deeply full of regret and shame and embarrassment because, we didn't buy the house when they were $3.50 each. We didn't start investing, before we were 5 years out from retirement. Like there's just all of this heaviness that exists around what could have been or what should have been. And what I say to people is, look, we do want to do some sort of like archaeological dig and mine into understanding what's happened so far, but not to judge, to really be, you know, uh, arm's length and understanding what am I taking as a lesson from that rather than burying it deep in the garden and hoping that everyone, including yourself, forgets about it. Why don't we look and mine for those insights so that the next time it happens, it's not an if, it's a when. Next time we go to buy the thing because we're angry or emotional. Next time we stop ourselves from making that investment because we think, wow, what if the world is on fire and, we all, explode tomorrow? What are we going to tell ourselves? Because the impact of not doing something is often felt far, far worse than the impact of doing it imperfectly and learning.
Yeah, well said again. On my fridge, I have a mantra, taking perfect action. It's not originally, I got it from Pro Blogger back in 2015, I think. But yeah, also when I was writing my first book, I was also very scared, but I was kind of like, wow, you've just got to get your thoughts from your brain onto the the paper, or in this case, digitally, and then you can finesse it. Then you edit it.
Yeah, and my brain is like 700 feral cats running in all directions that I'm trying to put into nice, neat lines. And, I found that very, very hard. But what I say to people is if I can write a book that people seemingly are enjoying, my darling, you can do way more than you think you can. If I can write a book, you can do anything you think you can. And I mean that with a lot of sincerity because I think it was honestly one of the most isolating, soul bearing, stressful situations that I've ever been in, which A says to me, I've had a pretty charmed life. But B, I think speaks to the fact that we are conditioned to stay safe and stay in our lane of what we think we know how to do, especially as we get older. Like when was the last time you did something new? For me, before writing the book, I realized, goodness, it's been a lot. I do what I'm good at and not I don't enjoy the process of new scary things because, there's probably an element of control and goodness knows what else that I can work through, no doubt, in future therapy sessions. But I think, realizing that when you start something new, it's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to be scared and it's okay to keep going. And especially as you're learning about investing, you're learning how to budget correctly, you're learning about superannuation or how to protect yourself. It is okay to feel like, I don't really have a handle of this, but I'm just going to take the next step forward and then the next one after that. And what I say to people is confidence comes en route. It really does. And it's, I can learn about riding a bike from goodness knows how many YouTube. I presume that there's several million YouTube videos on that. But really, the best way to learn how to ride a bike is to get on it and get
Pretty
some
much.
band-aids. Get some band-aids ready.
Excellent. Now I have one final question for you, which is, do you have a Frugalista tip to share?
Oh, I think in the over consumerist world that we live in with breakneck trends and fads, and I saw a picture only this week of a cow amongst a giant pile of discarded clothing in a part of the world, which is just such a dystopian image. I think everyone needs to go on a treasure hunt day for outfits. I come to you today in a $12 op shop find jumper. I have found, and I've scoured, I have found the most wonderful collection of clothes over the years, especially as it's getting colder, as it is here as we're recording this today. My pro tip is, if you want good quality jumpers, I have found that country towns are quite good. The op shops there are quite good. I have a family in the very deep rural south of New Zealand where, cold is actually cold. And so they need, really good woolens. And I always shop for my jumpers, not only in a country op shop, but in the men's section. It's a niche thing to say, but I'd love everyone to experience the treasure hunting-esque vibes that you get from op shops. You don't go in with a list of what you want, which probably flies in the face of being, a frugal lass, and I am one. But you just never know. You have to be open to what the op shop gods are going to present to you. Maybe have a list of general things that you might need. I need a new jumper, I want a pair of jeans, or I always look for belts and random other knickknacks that I need for the house. But if we all just started to be more conscious of the cycle of clothing and where they end up, and stop buying Temu crap that, falls apart after one wear, and looked for things that are less fatty and more forever. I don't know. Could we have world peace and solve all of the problems? No, I don't think so. But I think it would solve a lot of budgetary issues, and I think it would definitely help the world in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I am a big op shopper. I have been for years actually before thrifting was common, and it was sort of like something I wouldn't talk about. I remember I had some earrings which were lovely. They were like 9 carat gold, which I got for $5 from an op shop, and someone commented on them, and I used to just say, "Oh, they're a gift from my husband," because I was too embarrassed to say they were op shop. But it's changed so much now. And now what I love doing too is swapping. I still like op shopping, but I'm trying not to do too much because I buy too much. But for years, I've also swapped with my sister, and that's really great too because we were similar sort of height and shape, and also to have similar tastes and style, and it's also fun.
So fun. I was part of my first clothes swap last year, and it was delightful. It was so great. And my friends always know that before they send things to the op shop, it comes via my house first, and I kind of have a look and see whether there's anything that I could make good on. But I think we've also, lost the art of borrowing things. I've borrowed
Yeah.
dresses and ski gear and, a whole bunch of things. And I think I didn't need to buy that. I only needed it for a hot minute. And so, swapping or borrowing, not stealing or begging, but, just thinking differently about how we consume and the budgetary impact of that, but also the other cascading benefits that come from that as well.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I'm assuming people can buy this in all major bookstores because I've seen it at the airport bookstore. I've seen it in major bookstores.
I hope so. If your local independent bookstore doesn't have it, that's okay. Just tell them that you want to get it in. We love supporting small and local bookstores, but if they don't have it, ask them to order it in for you. Otherwise, yes, it is available. I've been getting so many messages from people who are at airports, at Big W, at some of the bigger bookshops, with their face going, ah, and, pointing to my book, which has been really lovely. I've actually been really unwell since I launched the book. Embarrassingly, I've only seen it at the bookshop once, and that was the day it came out, on day one. I haven't actually been to any other bookstores where I've seen my book in the shop. Isn't that wild? I think I need to go on an adventure and see some
You do.
over the weekend.
It's such a rush, to be honest.
It would be
Yeah,
so
it's just
weird.
lovely.
Yeah. Yes. So available in all good bookstores. And if they don't have it, ask them to order it in. And, someone posted on LinkedIn and basically said, spoiler alert, this is the book that I'm giving to everyone this year for their birthday. And I couldn't be more thrilled to see that. I feel like it's the gift that keeps giving. And actually, I think books are such a wonderful gift. They're deeply personal and they're not expensive. And, everyone needs a book in some way, shape, or form.
Definitely, and definitely support Australian authors because that's really important. So thank you very much once again for being my guest.
Thank you for having me.